Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This time, we're taking a look at machine learning. It's everywhere you look these days, so we're going to try to break it down, see what it can do, where the problems are, and, what it all means for, you and me.
It really is remarkable. I mean, we're not talking about science fiction here, folks. Machine learning is really changing how we live in ways both big and small.
Absolutely. I mean, think about, have you ever searched for something online, and then suddenly you're seeing ads for it everywhere you go?
Happens to me all the time.
Yeah, that's machine learning at work. But it goes so much deeper than that. I mean, the potential is just enormous.
Huge, and it keeps growing. Think about, what if algorithms could design new medicines, or predict earthquakes, or even write music? We're getting closer to that all the time.
That's both incredibly exciting and kind of scary, right? How much power are we really giving to these algorithms?
That's the key question, isn't it? We can't just ignore the ethical side of things. As we rely on these algorithms more and more, we have to be really careful about how they're used.
It's like we're opening this incredible Pandora's box, and we have to make sure we don't lose control.
Right. We need to make sure these algorithms are fair, not making existing problems in society even worse.
Totally. We don't want algorithms that are biased against certain groups of people.
Absolutely. And on top of all that, there's this huge challenge of generalization. You can feed an algorithm tons and tons of data, even 1 trillion data points. But compared to all the data that's out there, that's still basically nothing.
So even with all that data, they could still be limited.
Think about it if you live in a small town your whole life, you might think you've seen it all. But then you leave that town and suddenly there's this whole world you never even knew existed. Algorithms can fall into that same trap.
That's a great way to put it. So how do we even begin to teach these algorithms to think outside of their little towns and apply what they know to new situations?
Well, that's where the real magic of machine learning comes in, I think. And it's not just one thing either. There are all these different approaches to the problem, different schools of thought.
Oh, interesting. Different tribes with their own languages and traditions.
Exactly. And each tribe has its strengths, and its weaknesses. Take the symbolists, for example. They approach learning like it's like a logic puzzle, using rules and symbols to represent knowledge.
Oh, okay. So it's like they're building this super complex machine piece by piece.
Precisely. But the thing is, the real world is messy. It doesn't always follow those neat little rules. That's where the connectionists come in. They're inspired by the human brain, building these networks of interconnected neurons that learn by adjusting their connections.
So instead of rigid rules, they're taking a more flexible approach, kind of like how our brains work.
Exactly. When you teach a child to ride a bike, you don't give them a list of instructions. You let them figure it out. They fall down, they get back up, and they learn through that whole process.
Makes sense. So we've got the rule-based symbolists and the brain-inspired connectionists. What other tribes are out there?
Well, you've got your evolutionaries. They're all about survival of the fittest, but for algorithms. They basically run simulations of evolution to breed algorithms that can solve problems, weeding out the ones that don't work so well.
So it's like natural selection, but for computer programs.
Exactly. Then there are the Bayesians. They're the statisticians of the machine learning world, always crunching numbers and figuring out probabilities.
So they're always updating what they believe based on the data they see.
Exactly. Always refining. And then you've got the analogizers. These guys are all about making comparisons. They learn by finding similarities between different situations.
Oh, I see. Hey, this new problem reminds me of this other problem I solved. Maybe I can use a similar approach.
Precisely. And each of these tribes, with their unique perspectives, is contributing to the overall goal of teaching machines to learn.
Which brings me to a question that's been bugging me. Is there some kind of master algorithm out there? One algorithm that can learn absolutely anything.
Ooh, that's the holy grail, isn't it? An algorithm that can adapt to any task, any problem. It would be incredible.
It would change everything, wouldn't it?
Uh-huh.
But is it even possible?
That's a big question. Maybe someday we'll crack the code. But for now, we've got to focus on what we do know and the challenges we're facing. One thing that really worries me is this black box problem. How do we make sure these algorithms are transparent? That we can understand how they're making decisions? Absolutely. It's a huge issue. As we use algorithms for more and more important things, we need to be able to trust them. And that means understanding how they work.
It's like going to a doctor for surgery, but you have no idea what their qualifications are or what methods they're going to use.
Yeah, you'd want to know, wouldn't you? We need to be able to look under the hood and see what's going on.
Exactly. Transparency is key. Otherwise, how can we know if these algorithms are being used responsibly?
It's not just about understanding, it's about accountability too. If something goes wrong, we need to be able to figure out why and who's responsible.
Makes sense. It's like having a legal system, but for algorithms,
Yeah,
making sure they're operating ethically.
exactly. And speaking of ethics, we can't ignore the impact all of this is having on the future of work. I mean, how is machine learning going to change the jobs we do, the skills we need?
That's a big one. Yeah, it's a question a lot of people are asking these days. Will robots take our jobs? It's not a simple answer.
Right, it's not like a yes or no thing. So what are we really talking about here when we say, like, the future of work?
I think it's more about transformation, not just replacement. Some jobs, or at least some tasks, will definitely be automated. But that doesn't necessarily mean we're all out of work. It just means, we need to think about what humans are good at, what machines are good at, and how they can work together.
So what can humans do that machines can't, even with all this fancy AI and stuff? Well, machines are great at patterns, crunching numbers, that sort of thing. But they're not so good at things like creativity, empathy, that human touch. Those are things that are really hard to program.
So it's more about, collaboration than competition.
Exactly. Imagine, a doctor using AI to help diagnose a patient. The AI can analyze scans, look for patterns, things like that. But it's still the doctor who's making the final call, using their experience and judgment.
Okay, that makes sense. So what skills do we need to thrive in this, future job market
Right.
where we're working alongside these machines?
Well, I think adaptability is huge. Being able to learn new things quickly, to adjust to new situations, and critical thinking, being able to analyze information, solve problems, and of course, lifelong learning. It's not like you can just learn one thing and be set for life anymore. You got to keep learning, keep growing.
It's like we're all students now, forever.
Pretty much. And it's not just about technical skills either. I think it's also important to understand these technologies on a deeper level, to see how they work, where the limitations are.
Because ultimately, it's still humans who are making the decisions about how these technologies are used, right?
Right. We need to be informed citizens, engaged in the conversation, not just letting things happen to us.
Speaking of things that are important to be informed about, let's talk about privacy. Our lives are becoming more and more digital, and that means we're leaving a trail of data everywhere we go. So how do we protect our privacy in a world where algorithms are constantly collecting information about us?
That's a big one, isn't it? I think we need a whole new way of thinking about privacy in the digital age. Right now, it's all about companies collecting as much data as they can. But what if we flipped that and gave individuals more control over their own data?
So instead of opting out of data collection, we would be opting in, choosing what to share and with whom.
Exactly. Imagine a personal data vault, kind of like a bank account for your data. You control what goes in, what goes out.
That's a cool idea. So companies wouldn't be able to just scoop up all our data without asking.
Right. And you could even use AI to help manage your data, set your privacy preferences, things like that.
That'd be awesome. But realistically, how do we get from where we are now to that kind of data ownership? It seems like a big shift.
It is. It would require, changes in technology and the laws and just in how we think about data in general.
So new laws, new technologies, new mindset. A lot to work on.
Yeah, but I think it's worth it. If we want to have a future where we can enjoy the benefits of technology without sacrificing our privacy, we need to start having these conversations now.
This whole conversation about data makes me think back to the master algorithm idea. If we could create an algorithm that can learn anything, wouldn't that mean it could also learn all our secrets, our habits, everything about us?
Yeah, that's a good point. The more powerful the algorithm, the higher the stakes, I guess. It's a double-edged sword.
It's like those stories about, a genie in a bottle. You get your wish, but there's always a catch.
Exactly. And with something as powerful as a master algorithm, the catch could be pretty significant.
So what's the solution? Should we just give up on trying to create these advanced AIs?
I wouldn't say give up, but I think we need to be really careful, really thoughtful. We need to be aware of the risks as well as the potential benefits.
And we need to make sure we're using these technologies ethically for the right reasons.
Definitely. Ethics has to be at the forefront of everything we do with AI.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit and talk about machine learning's impact on scientific discovery. I was reading about robot scientists that are running experiments and even publishing research papers. Is that like the future of science?
Well, I don't think it's about replacing scientists. It's more about giving them new tools, new ways to make discoveries. Like, imagine an AI that can analyze huge data sets, look for patterns that humans might miss, things like that.
So like having a superpowered research assistant.
Exactly. And it's not just about speed either. It's about perspective. AI can help us see things in new ways, maybe challenge our assumptions and lead to breakthroughs we might not have made on our own.
That's pretty exciting. But I also wonder, if AI is doing all the heavy lifting in science, will we even be able to understand the discoveries anymore?
Yeah, that's where the black box problem comes back in, doesn't it? If we don't understand how the algorithm works, how can we be sure the results are valid?
Right. It's like being given a cure for cancer, but you have no idea what's in it or how it works. You'd be a little hesitant to take it.
Exactly. So we need to make sure these AI-driven discoveries are transparent, that we can understand how they were made.
So it's not just about the results. It's about the process, too.
Exactly. We need both.
This has been a fascinating conversation so far.
Uh,
But I feel like we've only scratched the surface.
oh, for sure. And in our final part, we'll zoom out a bit and talk about the broader implications of all this for society, for the economy, for the future in general.
Sounds like we've got a lot more to cover. Okay, so we've talked about the potential of machine learning and some of the challenges and the ethical stuff. But where does this all lead? What kind of future are we building with all this technology?
Well, I think it's a future with, a lot of amazing possibilities. But it's also a future that requires some careful thought, some careful planning. Like, imagine a world where personalized medicine is just the norm, where diseases can be diagnosed and treated so much more effectively thanks to machine learning.
So no more one-size-fits-all treatments. Everyone gets something tailored just for them.
Exactly. And think about sustainability. Machine learning can help us optimize energy use, reduce waste, develop new clean energy sources. I mean, the possibilities are huge.
It's like we're giving the planet a chance to fight back against climate change, and we're using algorithms to do it.
Yeah, pretty much. But of course, there are, challenges too. Like, as automation increases, we have to think about the potential for job displacement. That's a real concern.
Yeah, we talked about that a bit earlier.
Yeah.
So how do we make sure that everyone benefits from these advancements, not just a small group of people?
It's a tough question. I think it's going to take a multi-pronged approach. Investing in education and training programs so people can develop the skills they need for the jobs of the future. And maybe even looking at new economic models, like universal basic income, to make sure everyone has a safety net.
It sounds like we need to rethink our whole relationship with work, with wealth. It's a big shift.
It is. And I think more than anything, we need a strong ethical framework to guide all of this. We have to make sure that these technologies are being used for good, not to make existing inequalities even worse.
Ethics. It really seems to be the central theme of this whole conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It's like a compass that we need to keep checking as we navigate this new world of machine learning.
Right. We have to keep asking ourselves, what are the ethical implications of this? Are we using this technology responsibly? Could it be used to harm people?
Absolutely. Those are the questions we need to keep asking.
It's like we're writing a new rule book for a new era, one where machines are becoming more and more intelligent and more integrated into our lives.
And that rule book has to be based on, on fairness, on transparency, on accountability, on putting human well-being first.
Well, this has been an amazing deep dive. I feel like we've covered so much ground, from the potential of machine learning to the challenges to the ethical considerations. It's a lot to think about.
It is. And I think we're really just at the beginning of this whole journey. There's so much more to come.
So where do we go from here? What can our listeners do to be a part of this conversation, to help shape this future?
I think the most important thing is to stay informed, stay curious. And don't be afraid to ask questions, to challenge assumptions. The future of machine learning isn't set in stone. It's being created right now by the choices we make.
That's a really empowering thought. It means we all have a role to play in this.
We do. We all have a responsibility to make sure these technologies are used for good.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of machine learning. I hope everyone listening found it, informative, interesting, maybe even a little mind-blowing.
It's been a pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you so much for joining us. We encourage you to keep exploring this topic, keep learning, and keep asking those tough questions. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more explorations of the fascinating world of science and technology. Until next time, keep on diving deep.